Hi dear students, dear friends, welcome to Gallant IAS. This is our World History Summary series for your UPSC mains examination. Yes, so here in the easiest, quickest and most effective way, we will do the summary series of world history. So world history again important for your mains GS1 paper and your history optional paper 2 section B world history. Without wasting time, we are starting now. This is American Revolution. Always it is very important why to study such modules for your examination, for which just have a look into the previous year's questions and UPSC standard expected model questions. From American Revolution, there were questions like this: why American Revolution was an economic revolt? Economic revolt. Why it was an economic revolt against British mercantilism? British mercantilism. Okay, there is a question like this: impact of American Revolution on entire Europe. What was the impact of American Revolution on entire Europe? Or what was that impact of American Revolution on French Revolution? French Revolution. Or there is a question like this: what is the conservative part of American Revolution? What is conservative about this American Revolution? Or there can be questions like this, for example, yes, role of Washington to this American Revolution, or his contributions. Or the question can be like this also, for example, the causes and consequences of American Revolution. Or no taxation without representation. What is the meaning of that? No taxation without representation with respect to American Revolution. Such way UPSC can ask questions. Okay. Now here, this will be a very quick summary series. Now here, American Revolution, the first point you have to take care is, it is from 1775 to 1783. Okay, 1775 to 1783, that is American Revolution. It happened in the 18th century AD. 18th century itself was an age of enlightenment. Okay, the entire Europe was influenced by ideas of enlightenment like humanism, rationalism, liberalism, individualism, secularism, democracy. Okay, such ideas influenced the European society in the 18th century AD. So this was an age of reasoning, and it was an age of science. Everyone is guided by modern scientific temper and now ready to follow the superstitious religious practices or rituals or these rules, regulations imposed on society by Orthodox Church or this monarchy, etc. They wanted to come out of this. Liberty, equality, fraternity, the idea of freedom, democracy, that individualism, humanism, nationalism, these were, yes, highly like such ideas heavily contributed to American Revolution. Enlightenment ideas heavily contributed to American Revolution, and they preferred a democratic government where the human rights are secured, or this freedom of speech, freedom of life, freedom of expression, freedom of financial security, all those things is ensured. They wanted a democratic government instead of an autocratic government. This is background of American Revolution. American Revolution was the world's first anti-colonial struggle. Again, it is important in your introduction point. If your point is American Revolution, answer is about American Revolution. Introduction, this is one idea. You can say this was world's first anti-colonial struggle. Okay. And of course, this was by the 13 colonies of Northern America. Most of the 13 colonies in Northern America is settled by these Europeans, British settlers. British settlers in these European settlers in these 13 colonies of America. They organized, the people of these 13 colonies of America organized a revolution against colonial British government. That was American Revolution. It was not mainly for political autonomy, it was basically for economic autonomy. Even though they had a little bit of political autonomy, their economic conditions were so severe because of the British imperial, mercantile and colonial policies. 13 colonies of Northern America. Okay, 13 colonies together organized a revolution against this British government. That was American Revolution. Different causes are there. This is also important for you. Yes, you will have to analyze the economic causes, political causes, intellectual causes, or socio-cultural causes. Okay, just analyze the different causes which contributed to this American Revolution. Economic causes, first important thing and most important is that is mercantile policies of this British imperial government. Mercantilism, that is an economic policy, a state regulated economic policy. Yeah, that is that is to make that balance of payment in favor of that mother country. That means it is a state regulated trade policy in which a particular country encourages exports over imports. It discourages imports and it encourages exports. That is basically for boosting the GDP of the mother nation. That is to accumulate maximum wealth to mother nation by maximizing the exports and minimizing the imports. Okay, that is to accumulate maximum wealth to mother nation in the form of gold and silver, and that is to boost the mother country's GDP, or that is to boost this wealth prosperity of the mother country. So as a result of mercantile policy of the British, what they did is they made the America their colony, a supplier of raw materials and buyer of the British products. Okay, this is basically for boosting the economy and the wealth of this Britain. Okay, as a result of this mercantilism, these American colonies, they lost their trading privileges, trading freedom they lost. Lots of trade barriers imposed upon these 13 colonies of America. Yes, they were supposed to supply raw materials to Britain. They were supposed to conduct overseas trade on these British ships only. They have to conduct a trade only with the consent of this British only, and they were supposed to supply the raw materials and buy the British products, and loads of such trade barriers, restrictions imposed upon. They cannot start own industries. Loads of such trade barriers imposed upon these American colonies, and their capitalist dreams were broken. Okay, now again series of navigation acts were also passed. See, this triangular trade, it always benefited Britain. Okay, these American colonies were supposed to be supplier of raw materials and buyers of the British finished products only. They cannot develop their own industries. There is no chance for growth of capitalism there, or capitalist economy there. There is no chance of growth of industries there, because their economic industrial interests are subordinated to British interests. Politically speaking, even though they have a self-appointed legislative executive councils, you see, governor of each state was British appointed governor. He has veto power, and also you see all these councils decisions can be vetoed by that governor's decision, or governor is more powerful. Governor is appointed by this British crown, British parliament. Okay, so politically also they have issues. Now again you see that intellectual reasons are there. You can see John Locke, some important things. John Locke, Montesquieu, Haddington, Milton, they all all promoted an idea that no government has the freedom to infringe the rights of the people. Okay, government is supposed to protect the rights of people. Government is supposed to protect the rights of the people. Government has no right to, yes, take away or infringe the rights of the people. Such ideas of democracy, people's government, people's sovereignty, okay, such ideas being promoted by such great thinkers of 18th century. Now some political theorists like Benjamin Franklin, Thomas Jefferson, James Wilson, they also promoted the idea of this enlightenment. They all promoted this modern idea of secularism, democracy, people's government, people's sovereignty, such ideas, individualism, such ideas promoted by such a political theorist also. And all these ideas contributed to, yes, developing or shaping a new constitution which will protect these people's rights, human rights. It will give equality, social equality, economic equality, independency, etc. So the people heavily influenced by the thoughts of such intellectuals, thinkers and political theorists also. Then, yes, 7 Years' War. There is a popular event which was 7 Years' War. Take care. In 7 Years' War, Britain and France fought with each other. Eventually, France or French troops were defeated, and these British settlers in 13 colonies of America, they were thinking that after the 7 Years' War, once the French is defeated, they were of the thought that they will be given permission to extend their migration to western side of America. Okay, they can French threat is over, French possession is over. These 13 colonies or the people of these 13 colonies, they felt they can move upward, they can move westward or western side. But unfortunately, what happened is, yes, British imposed to proclamation of 1763 Act, and it banned their western side migration. So there is no scope for western side migration. Also, 7 years war expenditure, that heavy debt, the British, that debt burden imposed upon these colony people. That is one major reason why this revolution started. Then you see a series of acts being passed, like a Sugar Act is there, Mutiny Act is there, Currency Act is there, Billeting Act is there, Stamp Act is there. I mean, all these duties, all these taxes imposed upon these American settlers. Okay, the people in America, 13 colonies. Yes, they were already, they have huge debt burden, again so many taxes imposed upon them. So they are totally angry. We don't have direct representation in the British Parliament, and such a far off distant British Parliament, British government, how dare they impose taxes upon me? Okay, so many burdens, but no economic freedom, no political freedom, okay, no independent government, no political representation, direct representation. Then how such a government is like, imposing this much tax burdens on these people? They are totally angry. Stamp Act, you see, yes, taxes imposed, duties imposed on all legal documents, licenses, leases, newspapers, and over all documents. So there started, that was the outbreak of this revolution, agitation. So there is a popular slogan which is no taxation without representation. If we don't have direct representation, then there is no taxation here. We will not be paying taxes. In Indian context also, you can see that Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel started a no taxation campaign. Even in this Gandhian phase also, there are loads of no tax, no rent campaigns we have seen. So no taxation without representation, and this became a popular global slogan for many revolutions, be it French Revolution, Russian revolutions. In many of the global revolutions, you can see it become a popular slogan. They all demanded for a self-representative government. Okay, why should I pay taxes to some like alien governments which is least responsible for my welfare? Okay. Then there is Sons of Liberty, an organization being found, Sons of Liberty, and they started agitation against these various taxation, Stamp Act, etc. Then finally, this British, they withdrew that Stamp Act, but instead of that, they introduced a Declaratory Act. Declaratory Act means British said, British will be having the right to impose taxes upon American people. Okay, such an act was passed. So what is the difference here? Stamp Act is withdrawn. On the other side, they introduced another act which is known as Declaratory Act. That means this British government will be having that privilege to impose taxes on these colonies or any act on these colonies. What is the difference? Okay, so there is a huge protest, Boston Massacre. The protesters, 5 protesters were killed down, shot down by these British troops. Then there is Boston Tea Party. Okay, Americans said that British government, you guys, you don't have any freedom or any right to impose taxes upon us. And British removed all taxes, but still they retained the tax with the tea to promote this British East India Company's tea trade, Yes, this tax on tea, they continued, they retained. Other taxes removed, but this tax, continued, just to show that British has the privilege and right to impose taxes upon these American colonies. Then American protesters, agitators, they become angry because this is a far off distant government and how they dare to impose taxes upon us. Okay, so when these tea containers, these ships carrying these tea containers reached Boston Harbor, American protesters said, we will not allow you to unload. Okay, we will not allow you to unload these tea containers, whatever. Then governor given a strict order that must be unloaded. Then what happened is, because American agitators were of the feeling that only a self-responsible government has the freedom to impose taxes upon us. If the tea is with the taxes, we are not ready to accept it. Okay, governor given an order to unloading. Then these protesters, American agitators, revolutionaries, in disguise of these Red Indians, original Native Americans, in disguise of Red Indians, Yes, what they did is they entered the ships and they offloaded tea containers into the sea. That is known as Boston Tea Party. It is not any other like tea parties, you know. It was offloading the tea containers into the sea and destroying those tea containers because those tea, they were imposed with the taxes, and American revolutionaries felt, yes, British government has no legitimate right to impose taxes upon us. Okay, that was Boston Tea Party. After which there is a series of intolerable acts. You see, a series of intolerable acts imposed upon American colonists, American people, these settlers. After which there is a Continental Congress. Okay, the representatives of the 13 colonies of America, they gathered together and they drafted a document of petition. They drafted a petition, sent it to English king. See, we want a self-government. We want this like a withdrawal of all these what is called discriminatory taxes on all such ordinances must be withdrawn. We must get our own self-government. These are some requests. They sent a petition to this English king. Okay, in the first Continental Congress, they gathered, they drafted this petition to English king, but English king rejected it. He preferred military action to suppress these revolutionaries. Then there is a series of battles at Lexington and Concord in 1775. Okay. Then Second Continental Congress at Philadelphia. This is historically significant. They decided to conduct own government. They preferred George Washington to lead this American Revolution. Again, they sent a final attempt, a final petition. They sent it to George III, this English king. It is known as Olive Branch. Okay, the petition was like this: see, give us self-government. Okay, remove these tax burdens, remove your ordinances, etc. We want a self-government. That is also ignored by English king. Then it was the formal beginning of British decided to continue war, formal beginning of the war. Then you can see Declaration of Independence. You see human rights, a document was drafted by this Thomas Jefferson. That was world greatest document on human freedom and human rights, etc. Then formal beginning of this American war, which is Battle of Saratoga, 1777. Then French and Spain also formed alliance with American revolutionaries against British. Then finally Cornwallis was defeated. American force under Cornwallis defeated in 1781. Then there is Treaty of Paris 1783. Then there is independence to 13 colonies of America. Formation of United States of America is like a federal structure is formed. A federal government and constitution is adopted. 1787 Constitutional Convention was held under George Washington at Philadelphia. Then formal launch of this American Constitution, which is a federal constitution. A federal system was adopted, and that was the launch of the world first democratic republic government. Significance of this American Revolution, again it is significant for you. American Revolution, world first anti-colonial struggle. It marked the establishment of a republican government, a federal republican government. It is not truly democratic in those days because slavery was not abolished. Slavery abolition, that was only after Civil War. Okay, so you see that is in the context of Civil War. So again you see franchise voting rights is not extended to all. So it was not, to some extent it was not truly democratic. Then the first written constitution was adopted. We know our constitution is also a book of borrowings. We borrowed many features of our constitution from different constitutions of the world or world nations. So the world first written constitution, that was American Constitution, and it was the victory of the democracy against despotic monarchy. Many great thinkers, philosophers contributed to success of American Revolution. Thomas Paine, Thomas Jefferson, Benjamin Franklin, Alexander Hamilton, George Washington. These names, if the question is about American Revolution, these names you should not skip in your answer writing. Liberty, equality, fundamental rights, nationalism, such ideas triggered, such ideas become popular after this revolution. Now American Constitution, it further boosted this growth of capitalism in America, on industries, growth of on industries and agricultural development. All this agricultural revolution all happened after American Revolution. Then this restriction on mercantilism is blocked, American capitalism is grown. Then see written constitution, adoption of a written constitution. Separation of powers. American Constitution has some features. I'm not discussing everything. Separation of powers. Okay, legislative, executive, judiciary, separation of powers. Federal Constitution. Division of power between center and states. Then it is a presidential constitution. Checks and balance system. I mean, president is the head of the state, head of the constitution. Then judicial review, republicanism, dual citizenship. Citizen of a particular American state and a citizen of America. Okay, so dual citizenship. Then spoil system, bills of rights, division of powers. These are some basic features of American constitution. In the regular class, we discussed in detail about each of them. So that's it. It's all about American Revolution. This is the summary of American Revolution. Just revise it. It will definitely help you in your mains revision, mains examination. So this series will continue. Your suggestions, your valuable suggestions, you can just mention in the comment box, whatever your suggestions. Okay, just leave it there. Just enjoy this preparation. So all the best. Thank you.